How much do you know about the Paralympic Games? Can you name 5 Indian Paralympians or any Paralympians from around the world? Do you know why it is important to talk about the marginalization of disability in sport? Hi and welcome to this video. I'm Anusha Prakash, an amateur athlete who is quite frankly tired of not seeing enough diversity in sport. So in 2021, 1 year after originally planned, Tokyo hosted the world's 2 biggest sporting events, the Olympic Games and shortly thereafter, the Paralympic Games. As someone invested in sports myself, particularly in athletics, I had purchased a subscription plan from the OTT provider Sony, who had bought the rights to telecast the Olympic Games. After the Olympics, I naively assumed that the Paralympics too surely would be broadcast on the same platform. But when I tuned in, I found out that Sony had passed over the purchase of the streaming rights for the Paralympic Games. I also found that there was nearly not enough reportage around the goings-on of the Paralympics, unlike the Olympics that had nearly taken over most of the media coverage while it was on. So this video is an attempt to effect a tiny change in how we view disability in sport by discussing more about the Paralympic Games. So let's begin at the beginning, the history of the Paralympic Games. The history of the Paralympic Games dates back to 1948 at a hospital for war veterans at Stoke Mandeville in the north of London, where a German urologist, Sir Ludwig Guttmann, was trying to think of ways by which to help his paraplegic patients recuperate more quickly. So around the same time as the Olympic Games in London, Dr. Guttmann decided to organize archery and netball competitions to encourage the veterans and give them back their sense of self and dignity. Little did Dr. Guttmann know that he was onto something big for para-athletes worldwide for decades to come. Following this, in 1952, the first International Stoke Mandeville Games were held, where veterans from the Netherlands competed alongside the British teams. From 1954 onwards, the Games began getting bigger and included more countries as each year passed, albeit only for athletes who were paraplegic. The 9th year of the International Stoke Mandeville Games in 1960 is officially considered the first Paralympic Games, although it continued to be referred under the old name until 1984. That year, the sporting event was conducted 6 days after the Olympic Games and included 8 sports such as athletics, wheelchair basketball, para-table tennis, etc., and 23 nations took part. As the years went on, more sports were added to the list and included more and more diverse groups of para-athletes from all over the world. Fast forward to 1989, after more than 4 decades of revolutionary inclusions in sport, the International Paralympic Committee was founded. By 2016, a total of 4,328 athletes from across 160 countries competed across 22 sports. The individuals who competed in the Paralympics had disabilities ranging from impaired muscle power, for example, paraplegia, quadriplegia, muscle dystrophy, post-polio syndrome, spina bifida, etc., to impaired passive range of movement and limb deficiency, such as amputation or dysmelia, to leg length difference, like short stature, hypotonia, ataxia, athetosis, vision impairment, and intellectual impairment. In 2021, the latest Paralympic Games were held in Tokyo between 24th August and 5th September. To look more closely at India's participation in the Paralympic Games, India first participated in 1968, where 10 athletes were sent to represent the country, of whom 8 were men and 2 were women. And although they did not win any medals in 1968, in the 1972 Games, the para-swimmer Murlikant Petkar set a world record time of 37.331 seconds and won a gold medal in 50 meters freestyle swimming category. In the subsequent years, India won medals on and off, with 1984 and 2016 being high points with 4 medals each. However, the Tokyo Paralympics was a resounding success for India, where it won 19 medals, 5 gold, 8 silver and 6 bronze. Therefore, with this information, it becomes all the more crucial to ask, why is it that despite disabled athletes and Paralympians repeatedly proving their athletic merit, do they not receive the due deserved to them? Why do they not receive their rightful place in history and sport heritage? In a paper titled The Marginalisation of Paralympic Heritage by Ian Britton and others, Britton and others suggest that the heritage of sports, that is, the value and emphasis we place on certain sports and sports people over others, tends to privilege able bodied narratives over others. A case in point being the blatant disregard by the media and public memory of the performances by Paralympic athletes and of the Paralympic Games themselves. This heritage, or lack thereof, is in part also constructed and shaped by the media. A very powerful reminder is offered in an article by Pearson and Mizner titled "Paralympians Still Don't Get the Kind of Media Attention They Deserve as Elite Athletes," which points out that media depiction of the Paralympics is mired in stereotypes. Moreover, the media resorts to a super crip narrative that is championing the athletes by reiterating the social misconception that disability is an individual problem that can be overcome if one sets their mind to it, hinting that other disabled people simply don't try hard enough. This narrative not only disregards the very real social, political, cultural, and economic challenges of disability, but also takes away from the effort and hard work of the athletes themselves. Other stereotypes involve focusing on the technology or prosthetics used by the athletes as the rationale for their success, rather than individual effort and skill. More horrifying research indicated that more media coverage was given to athletes who did not have obvious disabilities of the body, instead giving more airtime to the visually impaired, reiterating social stereotypes and homogenizing what a sports person's body should look like. Tragically, because of these reasons, Britain's research reflects that many Paralympic athletes go on to live lives in squalor, being forced to throw out their medals and equipment because they have no social value. And families of deceased athletes have spoken about throwing away sports artifacts because they fail to see any cultural or social value in retaining them for posterity or documentation. In most cases, disabled athletes are forgotten entirely in public memory, or worse still, never, even in the height of their success, receive any acclaim that they really deserve, either in the media or in society. What these media and societal narratives overlook is that the marginalization and invisibilization of disability in sports hinders much of the growth and positive change that the Paralympic Games have brought about, such as the positive correlation between the Games and social attitudes of people with regards to disability. And more importantly, the correlation between the Games and the amount of budget allocation and funding toward disabled athletes in countries across the world. Encouraging disability in sport also provides incentives for developing cutting-edge technology that helps make the lives of all disabled individuals easier. So what can be done about this misrepresentation and lack of support to disabled athletes? Citing from a research paper titled "The Politics and Policy of Inclusion and Technology in Paralympic Sport Beyond Pistorius" by Andy Smith and Nigel Thorne. In the past, the International Paralympic Committee has spoken about the intention to increase the integration of sports for athletes with disabilities into the international sports movement for able-bodied athletes, while safeguarding and preserve sports for disabled athletes. And Dr. Robert Stedward, a former president of the IPC, has also envisioned a future where the inclusion of events for athletes with a disability in major international competitions, such as the Olympics, as well as the inclusion of athletes with a disability into sport opportunities in which they can participate side by side with their able-bodied counterparts. Bringing together the two games would help significantly, as the Paralympics is seen as a way to make disability more acceptable in the mainstream and to further the agenda of inclusion. However, it is worth noting that a single sporting event cannot reverse the systemic and social inequalities and problems faced by disabled people worldwide, and it must be compounded with additional policy level and societal changes. So very interestingly, a compelling paper by Lauren J. Lieberman titled Infusing Paralympic Sport and Concepts into the Physical Education Curriculum offers a unique solution, that is, infusing disability in sport into physical education curricula, which can increase awareness of geography, sociology of cultures related to disability, history of sports participation in the Paralympics, and the triumph of the human spirit. There is significant research which shows that encouraging discussions about disability and including parasports in the school curriculum is tremendously helpful in sensitizing younger generations to disability and disability in sports. Some suggestions across research is to schedule time to not only teach the sport, but also play the modified version of the sport that is disabled friendly. Other options would be to watch videos of parasports and organize events where students can meet real athletes to better understand parasports and make space for healthy engagement with disability. But of course, it is extremely important that discussions around disability and any hands-on training should be dealt with utmost sensitivity and dignity. However, that is not to say that the onus lies wholly upon the school system or the government alone. It is both a collective and individual responsibility to make our worlds and our sports more inclusive for people with all abilities and bodies. Before we conclude, I'd like to go back to what I started the video with. Can you name at least 5 para-athletes in the world, or in my context, Indian Paralympians? If not, I'm happy to quickly introduce 6 male and 6 female athletes each, consider the extra one a bonus, to take back and find out more about as part of your homework. I do want to mention that I'm aware that I'm using the gender binary here, but that is only because the Paralympic Games divides athletes in the binary, and therefore I am leveraging the same categories. However, it is again another discussion and a very crucial one that we include all genders and sexualities when we talk about sport in order to reimagine how we configure our sporting categories in the future games and across sports. So some male Paralympic athletes in India are Mariyappan Thangavelu, who is in high jump, Pramod Bhagat, badminton, Harvinder Singh, archery, Devendra Jajaria, javelin throw, Suyash Jadhav, swimming, Manish Narwal, shooting. Female Paralympic athletes are Avni Lekhara, shooting, Sakina Khatun, powerlifting, Bhabina Patel, table tennis, Simran Sharma, athletics, Prachi Yadav, canoeing, Aruna Tanwar, taekwondo. So of course, as you notice, the emoticons in the slides that I have used also show how disabled people do not have enough representation, even in terms of something like icons. So disabled children or disabled people do not see themselves in the iconography and emoticons that are available for people to use, even in something like a presentation. But with this, I want to thank you for watching this video. I enjoyed making it and learning more about disability in sport and the Paralympic Games. And I also felt like I became more sensitized to this topic, and I hope you have felt the same. If you learned anything from this video, please give it a thumbs up and share the content to educate many more on this pertinent subject. Thank you and goodbye.